The controversy over surrogate parenting also surfaced at Boston University today, where experts in public health law considered whether technology has moved too far ahead of legal and moral issues. Marcus Jones was there.
Exploitation, baby selling, the prostitution of motherhood. Just a few of the charged buzzwords tossed around today at Boston University's School of Law, where they debated the ethics of surrogate parenting.
The entire procedure treats the woman like an incubator. It's not her baby. And indeed, surrogate mothers are fond of saying this. This is not my baby, I'm just growing it for someone else.
On the right, BU Professor George Annis, an expert on health law and an opponent of surrogate parenting arrangements, such as the one disputed in the Baby M case.
The crime in this country is not surrogate babies that are wanted. The crime is 12, 13, 14-year-old girls having babies and taking them home and having the government pay to raise them.
On the left, Attorney Herbert Braille, one of the architects of the surrogate parenting contract that was upheld this week in the Baby M case.
I felt very strongly about wanting to have a child, not to raise it. I wanted the experience of being pregnant. I wanted the experience of labor and being able to have the baby.
And in the middle, 33-year-old Lori Johnson, who gave birth to her first surrogate child for a New England couple last year, something she plans to do again this year.
I have had no regrets, and I have no problem with what I have done. I feel very positive about it.
The problem with having women, a group of women who are willing to gestate children but not to rear them, is that we basically set up a class of women whose primary virtue is what we've always seen to be a primary vice. That you're willing to have children that you're not willing to love or to rear.
Anybody that criticizes a planned child, a wanted child, as being wrong, as being immoral, as being a sick joke, has never felt the pain, the suffering, the agony that an infertile couple who's been married perhaps 10 years or more do when they find out there are no options available.
A person could actually contract with 5 separate surrogates to have 5 children. It has absolutely no connection with whether there's childlessness involved, even though when you first came in you told us that we were jaded because we didn't realize how painful it was to be childless.
It's unlikely any minds were changed during the debate. Those opposed still left incensed by the commercial nature of contractual motherhood. And those in favor remain convinced childbearing for a price is not a vice.
Infertility should not dictate that you use one method or the other. No one can tell you what is best for you. You have to make that choice yourself, and I want them to have that choice.
Motherhood is becoming a new branch of prostitution. Women are being sold for these breeding purposes.
The students who've been organizing this event say it couldn't have happened at a better time, just days after the conclusion of the nation's most publicized surrogate parenting dispute, and at the beginning of a whole new round of debate on the issue. For the 10 o'clock news, I'm Marcus Jones.
We continue now with 2 guests, both of whom you met just a moment ago in that story. Author Jenna Carillo, whose book, The Mother Machine, argues against the practice of surrogate motherhood. And Lori Johnson, who, as you heard, has already been a surrogate mother for 1 baby and is about to go through the process again. Jenna, let me begin with you. A lot of state legislatures trying to avoid the kind of Baby M situation that we have all seen has been very painful for both families, are now considering such things as it's all right if no money exchanges hand. It's all right if the mother has a 20-day period in which to change her mind. Would that make this practice all right in your view?
Well, I don't really want to regulate it. I think it should end because it is a new way of selling women, and the potential for exploitation of women is enormous. But I was just in Michigan this past weekend where the state legislature had an advisory committee to advise it on new laws, and that committee, which I was a member of, came out really very strongly against surrogate motherhood. And one of the proposals they suggested was to make the contract unenforceable. The effect of this would be, one of the effects of this would be helping to eliminate the middlemen in this procedure. We also talked about potential criminal sanctions for third parties. In other words, the agencies which have sprung up in order to sell women for this new purpose.
Do you think it will end altogether, or at best are you looking at something that will regulate it somewhat?
Well, I think we need a larger societal discussion about where this is all going, and I think if we have that, I hope values would come out with us wanting to end this. And I think we need to place surrogate motherhood in its general context, which is that there is an increasing commercialization and industrialization of reproduction. Increasingly, there are companies being formed to sell reproductive services, not only selling surrogates, selling women for reproductive purposes, but there are companies set up to sell sex predetermination technology so that people can choose whether they want a boy or a girl child. Companies set up to sell embryo flushing technology and in vitro fertilization technology. Once that economic motive gets in, there's a strong motive to continually expand the services. You don't just want infertile people as clients, and this is not just affecting infertile people, and infertile couples will not be the only customers of a surrogate mother. Surrogate mothers. In fact, Noel Keane, who is one of the big surrogate brokers, has said that this new practice is a wonderful new opportunity for single men who want children without romantic entanglements. So the thrust always will be to expand the market for these services. For example, with embryo flushing, a company's been set up to flush embryos out of women after they've been artificially inseminated. One of the marketing techniques would be to expand this so that every single pregnant woman would have an embryo flushed out of her as part of prenatal care, so that the embryo could be evaluated to see whether it is healthy or not.
Let me stop you there, because
Yes.
I want to turn to Laurie Johnson and give you a chance to respond. Jenna says that she feels it's selling women. Do you feel as if you have been sold in some way?
No, not at all. I made a very wise, to me wise, and a very logical and well thought out decision before I entered into any kind of contract and before I even fully investigated surrogate parenting. For at least 6 months before I went to Noel Keane to investigate what he had to offer me. I wanted to have a child. It was my idea. It was not his idea. I wanted to have a child, but I don't have the character. I believe I do not want to raise a child. I think that's a very difficult job.
Ever?
I don't want to raise a child. It's not something in my life that I care to do. I wanted to have a baby, and I thought for a long time, that's a very nice thought, and it's not going to go anywhere until I saw this opportunity. And to me, it seemed very positive. And it was my idea to go to him to see what he could offer me, not that he came to me and said, listen, would you have a baby for somebody else?
Do you have visitation rights, or do you have any interest in having visitation rights for this child?
Legally, I have no visitation rights, but the relationship that the couple and I have been in contact with them. They were with me when the baby was born. They stayed with me with the baby while I breastfed for the first week, and I can visit him and they can visit me anytime. I don't think that will change. If it does, I think there will probably be a drastic reason on their part why it will, but I have no problem with that.
There are so many issues here. It's hard to distill.
I think the class issue is a really important one, if I can jump in, because it's really clear that poor women are going to be used in this new business. And I interviewed John Stahura, who is the head of one of the surrogate firms in California, and he told me that surrogacy was at this point just too expensive for middle-class American couples. And the way to bring the price down was to bring down the price paid to the surrogate. And you could do that if you went into poor parts of the country or if you went into third world countries and paid. There, he said, the women would be very happy with $1,000 or even less. And he said that he was looking into the new embryo transfer technology, which would allow a couple to have its own embryo inserted into a third world woman. She could gestate the child and turn the child over to them. We have already had the first horrible case of a third world woman being used in this way. In California, a Mexican woman was brought in illegally across the border and gestated a baby for a couple that hired her. What they planned to give her was $1,500, which is well below the already exploitive rate of $10,000. When the surrogate industry started, by the way, in 1977, 10 years ago, the price paid to women was $10,000. It's 87. The price paid is still $10,000, the general price. Yet the fees for the lawyers and the doctors and the psychiatrists who screen these women and make these deals goes up. So that's just one of the ways in which women are exploited and devalued in this.
The screening is another issue. As we all saw the very tearful face of Mary Beth Whitehead just a few moments ago, and I'm struck by you're very cool and calm and collected as you sit here. She feels that the practice is harmful and unnatural. What is the difference between how she feels and how you feel?
I don't know her. I haven't been following the case so closely that I know everything that has been said from her and about her. I know that I went into it with very open eyes. I know myself very well. I know what I wanted out of it. I got exactly out of it what I wanted. And I'm very sure of myself in that I knew what I was thinking for many years before I got into the situation, so I knew that my philosophies would not change overnight.
Let me ask you both just truly in a word or two. Who do you think should be deciding these issues? Should it be the courts? Should it be the legislatures? Jennifer?
I think, well, the legislators, but before that, I think we need to have a real discussion of what kind of world we want to live in. Do we want to live in a world in a few years where everything is grist for the capitalist mill? Everything can be sold. Women can be sold. Babies can be sold. Do we want this increasing industrialization of reproduction in which increasingly women's bodies are simply the raw material for this new industrial process, and babies are products? And it's very clear that babies are products in this procedure, that the father does not have to take a defective product. He does not have to take it according to the contract that the Stearns and the Whiteheads wanted. Sorry, do we want that kind of world?
Laurie, courts or legislatures?
I think there should be some legislation on it. I don't think that even if it is abolished by the courts, that it will go away. I think there are too many infertile couples who have already heard about it, who have been investigating it, and even if they do it illegally or they do it on their own, I don't think it will go away just because the courts say yes or no.
We'll continue to follow it as well. We thank you both, Jenna Carillo, Laurie Johnson.
Thank you.